In my meta, here's how a game of Battletech goes down. First, we agree on the battle value we want to play. Do we feel like an average-sized Battletech game, a really large-scale game, multiplayer game, or perhaps we have a limited window of time, or a small, quick game, or a couple of games, but we come up with a battle value. Then we toss it out there. Are we doing combined arms, total warfare, artillery, air support? This way, whatever decisions we make, we're fully aware. If we're doing air support, I might take some air units, or maybe I'll take some anti-air mechs, or maybe I'll even roll the dice and just load up on mechs and power through. But the idea is we have a framework. And then we ask, what are you feeling in terms of scenario or terrain? Do we want to do something random? Or in this case, my vote most of the time would be city fight, city tech. So this way we have a framework of what we're going to play. You can make your tactical decisions, but the actual miniatures, the actual configuration of the lances and the tanks, that's not revealed until the day that you show up. We set up the table, we put out the deployment zone, we deploy our mechs, and we're ready to go. Now, certainly there's no hidden information there. When you deploy out your mechs and your machines, if there's something new or experimental or something you've never seen before, you can see my data sheet. You can see the tech readout. Likewise, I can see yours. And if you've played Battletech with me for a while, you kind of know I bring some experimental stuff from time to time for the lulls, but there are key mechs that, for a variety of reasons that I've explored in other vlogs pushed up to the channel here under the Battletech playlist, that, on average, you're going to see 2 or 3 of these on the table. So within that framework, I enjoy playing a Stalker. I regularly play a Stalker. Every couple of months, my good Battletech friend also will deploy a Stalker. And we've got kind of a rivalry going on when this Stalker appears and my Stalker appears. Stalker versus Stalker. There's some history there between those two mech warriors. And regardless of the mission, regardless of what's going on, those Stalkers need to go head to head. Sometimes it's tactical. Sometimes it's with support. Sometimes I just kind of walk out to the middle of the table or the hex map and meet me in the center, and we just blast away and mash a bunch of buttons in that mech and see who comes out on top. So within that framework, we explored a little while ago mech versus mech, machine versus machine. This idea of you're out there, you're a mech warrior, you encounter this type of machine. What are some of the tactics that we can use to go machine versus machine? If I have a Warhammer, you have a Marauder, we meet head to head, how am I going to beat you? So I wanted to kind of take that and sidebar it to mech versus mech. We would call this a mirror match. And you see this sometimes in other wargaming systems where you can have similar factions. Now, just to framework that, something like Warhammer 40,000, sci-fi-based miniature game. You could play Space Marines versus Space Marines. The rules allow it. I show up with my army, you show up with yours. But for the most part, it's different armies playing at different levels. So you don't have a mirror match. Chain of Command, World War II. There's a big difference in the armies, in the tanks. You're not going to have a mirror match there. But certain wargaming systems like Battletech, where you have these corporations and these various sales going to the different houses. You have mech factories in different houses, right? That invisible border right there between houses. We've got one factory pumping out Jenners on one side and another factory pumping out Jenners on the other side. So the only difference is the quality of the mech warrior and maybe the color of the paint on the mech. So in Battletech, there is a good possibility to regularly see mirror matches. So with that framework, how do you beat something when it's exactly the same? And I know you can adjust in terms of battle value. We explored battle value yesterday up to the archive. You can increase your battle value with a machine just by upgrading the various pilot skills and pilot abilities. So we're going to say, for the sake of this vlog, those Stalker pilots, those mech pilots, they're exactly the same. Maybe they're twin brothers, twin sisters, who knows? So within that framework, what are we looking for? So the first thing, of course, this is true of any mech. Identify the strengths, identify the weaknesses, and look for that exploit. So with the Stalker, it's got a lot of armor. Am I really going to be able to break through that? Even with a Stalker firing on a Stalker, they're going to be return firing. We can take a lot of punishment. But the primary flaw of the Stalker, well, I shouldn't say flaw. The primary challenge with the Stalker is heat management. And we're talking about some tactics here. I mean, I'm not running up, although I do this. I'm not going to run up right to your Stalker and blast away and see who blinks first. That's often called the joust in a war game, where two units will go head to head and just see who blinks first. And the person that blinks, the player that pulls off or banks away or retreats, tactical redeployment, that's where you follow up and push. You could do that. You could. But what we're looking at here is, if the Stalker is vulnerable to heat, can we get that machine to push the heat even more? And once it begins to get crippled by heat and now can't clear it effectively, that's when we push forward. So now that Stalker can't say, well, I've pushed the heat. Now for a turn or two, I won't do anything. I'll clear it. Then I'll be back in the game. No, if I'm pushing you where you have to continue to fire minimal weapons while I pour on more, that's a tactical advantage. Now, if that Stalker is generating heat, firing at my Stalker, that's a lot of weapons coming at me. So I want to look for a place, or can I look for a place where I've got some cover, where I can keep moving? Sometimes what we see in terms of getting your opponent to push the heat, and I understand there's other dynamics. If we're looking at Stalker versus Stalker, there's other lance mates, there's other vehicles, there's other stuff going on. I mean, the complexity is a little bit more, but we're looking at this pinpoint moment. If I can allow my opponent to get to a superior position on the hex map where they've got some cover, or they've got their side or their back against elevation, clearly a superior place where they're not going to move from, then they'll fire a little bit more because I don't have to move. I've got my cover. I've got my concealment. I've got something protecting me, right? Two ways you can protect your mech is movement and interaction with terrain. Then if they're in a great place where they can be encouraged to fire, then I'll let them do that, which means my Stalker has to prioritize range and always keeping moving to try and stack that. So what are some of the things that I can do? And of course, I'm firing back at the same time as you're firing. But if I can maintain heat discipline and I can encourage you to have heat discipline, that's the way to go. That's the first way to kind of go head to head. So looking at a machine, what is the weakness? What can you encourage your opponent to do? And then when they do it, use that as a counter. Another example would be to look at what the machine excels at and attack it on the opposite side. What I mean by that is going Stalker to Stalker. Stalker's got a lot of firepower. If I've got a Stalker, I'll have a lot of firepower. Can I get close? And we might have to do some initiative shenanigans here. Can I get close and now start with physical attacks? Start hitting you with kicks? Can I be in a position that you can't kick me because you're going to kick right back? Can I use possible elevation, or can I use facing to try to focus my fire on one side of the mech, right? If I can go to the left side of your mech, fire, hopefully cut down the odds a little bit, piling up on that side to do more damage to that left leg, and then I can move into kick. Is there a way I can shortcut your advantage? An example, if I had a mech that was extremely fast, can I box it in somehow? If I had a mech that had jump jets and it's going to utilize those jump jets, can I take that mech to the middle of nowhere? So yes, it could still jump around, but it's not like it can jump behind cover or jump out, shoot, push the heat, jump back and hide somewhere. So with those mirror matches, it's really looking and saying, I don't want to go head to head with the machine. What area does it face a challenge? What area doesn't it excel at? And how can I trap it into that moment? Now, once you have it trapped in that moment, what does the machine do well? What does your machine do well? That's what we're going to push forward. That's what we're going to go. The other aspect now, looking at combined arms or part of a lance, because that's important in Battletech. Other stuff is going on. If I'm going machine to machine, and in theory, they're going to counter what you're going to counter. Going back to our Stalker to Stalker analogy, then if I go to cover and you go to cover and we just trade shots, we're going to be here for a long time. If I run forward and you run forward and we just start blasting each other and kicking each other, same thing is going to happen. So when you mirror match someone, essentially what it comes down to is the dice. The dice. I don't say blame it on the dice. I mean, it's convenient to blame it on the dice. But two stalkers standing 3 hexes across from each other and firing the same stuff, doing the same stuff, yes, the hit locations are going to be a little bit different, but if the dice on average favor certain hit locations over the other, very quickly one stalker is going to go to internals because it's going to punch through more rather than spreading out. Or I might get a lucky headshot, and as a pilot, I knock out your mech warrior, they go night-night, and then I can get a free turn or two of shooting. So within that perspective, if you're mirror matching and they're doing the same thing, then what I want to do is get to a defensive position, drag it out as long as I can so other elements of my lance, of my vehicles, of my support can get into place and then knock you out. I don't want to drag it out forever because think of battle value. The battle value of your stalker, if I'm in cover and you're in cover and we're just trading shots, well, that's good because you're not really going to be effective. I'm not really going to be effective. The battle value you paid or the C-bills that you paid for that stalker, it's not out there earning full potential on the table or the hex map. But likewise, it's not earning full battle value for me, my stalker. So I want to defeat you really fast if I can anchor you in place and then have other stuff come in. Send in my 3 Saladins that are just for dirt cheap. Saladin is, imagine a lightly armored hovercraft. So imagine a frame made out of aluminum. And we're going to put a pretty fast engine in it. Then I'm going to put a lawn chair on there, sit you on it, put some like paper thin armor, and then mount a giant autocannon 20 right on the front. Very fast, very amazing, low battle value for what it is. It's only 1 autocannon. You only got 1 shot. But you take 3. You wolf pack them. You run them together. That's 3 autocannons. They're getting rear armor. You're going to savage. Side note, pushed up to the Battletech archive. Saladin hover tanks. I give you permission right now to go out and buy 3. They're a lot of fun. So from that case, if I'm going stalker to stalker and I can anchor you in, I send in my 3 Saladins. Let's see what we can do. So mirror matches, they're going to happen in Battletech. How often do they happen? Depends partially on your meta and your player personality. I love Warhammers and I love Marauders. Other Battletech players that I play with, they love Warhammers and Marauders. And occasionally we will have those mirror matches or they'll show up on the table. And sometimes I'm linking together big player games where we've got a bunch of hex maps. You've got a Warhammer, I've got a Warhammer, but your Warhammer's on one side of the hex map. I'm on the other side based on deployment because we do blind deployment or random deployment. And we're never going to make it there, so I don't have to worry about the mirror match. But for those times that there is that mirror match, we want to break it because they've got their battle value invested. You've got your battle value invested. And if we just flip ping pong back and forth, then it's the luck of the dice. How's that going to turn first? We want to add and layer on some tactics over it.